When you can master yourself, then you can master anything outside of you. Authority is that ability to be in tune with who we are, in tune with what we're thinking and how we're moving through the world. And that then shows up as confidence.
When you stop caring what people think and you start caring what you want, that's when change really happens.
It's so important to have people that we look up to that have done things that seem impossible, that if they can do it, I can do it mentality, that there's no difference between them and me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspired Authority. Most people think they need more confidence, more experience, and more credentials. But what if the thing standing between you and the life you want isn't lack of capability? Because most people aren't limited by their potential, they're limited by the stories that we've accepted as truth. Today's guest has spent decades helping people uncover what's really happening beneath the surface of performance and growth. I'm joined by Carole Mahoney, author of the book Buyer First, Harvard Business School sales coach, and someone known for helping people understand the psychology behind why they get stuck and how we move forward. This conversation is about becoming the person capable of holding the future that you're asking for. Carole, welcome to the show.
I am so delighted to be here with you, Laura. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. And I should have pulled my Buyer's First book. I don't know if you can see it. I've got it right up there. So we've got Buyers First. I love everything that you represent, and I could not be more excited for this conversation. But before we do dive in, who are you beyond everything that you do in your work life?
So my personal life and my work life very much mirror each other. But I love to be with my family. I have two grown boys. They're young men now, so I suppose I should just stop calling them boys. I have a wonderful husband who supports me in all of the crazy ideas that I have. I am a gardener, musician. I'm a writer. My favorite thing to do is to just walk out into the middle of the woods with no technology, just me and my dog, listen to the birds, be part of nature. So I guess you could say I'm a little bit of a hippie as well.
I love all of that. A couple of things I need to ask you about that. So, number one, picking your partner like
Mhm.
your life depends on it is a core value of mine. I love that you said that your husband goes with all of your crazy decisions and the things that you love to do. Any advice for the people who are currently out there trying to find their life partner?
It's interesting because when we first started dating, I was a single mom. I was going to college. I was working a full-time job. I had a rental apartment. And so when we were first started dating, I said, look, I have two kids. They're not going anywhere. I have all of these other priorities. And so you're not going to be my number one thing in my world. And if you're okay with that, then we can date. And if you're not okay with that, then maybe we should just not even bother. And his response to me was, well, I like football, beer, and I wear work boots. So if you're okay with that, I think that we can get along. And I think so. But what that told me from the outset was that here is someone who's willing to work with me, to compromise with me, to partner with me, to build something and not expect this, traditional wife role or this traditional husband role. And we've really built a life together that we really didn't even know that we would be able to do it. We just kind of had that daydream of what we were going to build together. And, we've had our ups and downs, but at the end of the day, I know that he is willing to change and that I am willing to change, and that after 20 some odd years, we've grown and evolved together. It's been bumpy for sure, but it's also been, I have a partner in all of this. Not that I'm trying to drag him along or push him into something or convince him of something. He's like, whatever I'm game for, he's game for, and vice versa.
I love that. Setting expectations at the beginning of any engagement, whether it be sales, relationships, friendships, work,
Yep.
is critical. So we're
Yeah.
going to talk a little bit more about that because I know you talk about that in your book.
Hmm.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was gardening, because I can tell that that probably does play a role in what you do for work too. What are
Yeah.
you most excited about growing in your garden this year?
Oh gosh, I'm growing so many things this year. And I look at gardening and I weigh the reason that I love it, and I think it ties to the work that I do, is I love seeing something that is small and inconsequential grow into something that can feed you, that can shade you. And I think of people in the same way. I love to grow plants, I love to grow people because I see the potential in all of it. And what I'm growing this year, gosh, I'm growing potatoes this year, which I did last year, but all of the varmints got to it. So I've come up with a Fort Knox sort of bedding for my potatoes so that the critters don't get to it because we're an Irish family. So, for us, a 7-course meal is 6 potatoes and a beer or something. So we love our vegetables in that regard. So I'm excited for the potatoes. We always grow a ton of tomatoes as well because I make salsa that we eat through the winter, spaghetti sauce that we eat through the winter. So the garden is definitely my happy place.
I love that. It was my happy place. I had to put it aside this year, but next year I'm coming back and I'll come to you for some advice because I get a lot of critters. And
Oh,
that is uh, the critters and the diseases and all the things. I only started a few years ago, so I have a lot to learn.
and it's a constant battle. I live in the woods, and so everything from rabbits to squirrels to moles to voles to birds and eagles. I have also have chickens, and so I have like a whole little homestead going on.
Chickens is next on my list as well. So I
They're
love
great.
that.
They eat ticks. They give you great compost later on. They're just an all around great, easy animal to keep in your yard.
Oh, I can't wait to one day have chickens as well. Okay. So we're going to dive in a little bit. You've worked with incredibly successful people. I've seen you on a lot of stages as well. What surprises you most about what high performers and successful people with struggle with internally?
It's interesting because they struggle with the exact same things that everyone else does. Do I belong in this room? What gives me the right to do or say this? Who do I think I am? And I think this is probably the number one thing that I see both in high performers and really anyone is the concern and worry about what other people are thinking about them. It's a human trait. It's how we've evolved and how we've survived as a species. But in our modern day, it is the single biggest thing I think that holds us back.
Yeah, I also agree that most of the time it's hard for us to get our ideas and our thoughts out there because we're so focused on the outside that it's
Hmm.
hard to really let the inside flow out.
Right.
Why do we question ourselves so much from your experience? Like, why do capable people still question themselves?
Well, it wasn't I don't know about you, but growing up as a kid, it wasn't safe to be the person who stood out, right? Like if you were different, you were mocked, you were teased, you were, put into a bucket of this particular type of person. And so we've somehow learned to kind of protect ourselves, to try to blend in, to try to be like everyone else so that we don't get singled out. And if you think and go back to, how we've evolved as a species from tribes, if your tribe didn't like you and you were left out in the cold, then that was, life or death. And our brains are hardwired that way. We're social creatures. We want others to accept us and to like us, but it's also that thing that gets in our way of doing the things that might be never been done before or outside of what we would normally do or that, who do you think you are to be able to go and do this that resonates in our minds? And sometimes it's a voice that has come from our past. And I have to say that the one of the most liberating things for me and the most liberating things that I have also found with those that I work with is that when you get over it doesn't really matter what people think of me. There's a sense of freedom, a weight that gets taken off of your shoulders. And I was actually just saying this on a post on LinkedIn yesterday is that when you stop caring about what other people think of you and start caring more about how you can help them or what they need at that moment, not only do you feel a sense of freedom, but all of a sudden everything becomes much more fun because now you're free to do the things that you thought were crazy or no one's done this before. Who do I think I am? When you let go of that, what are other people going to think when they see me doing this? It's that lack of caring is a sense of freedom. And that's where I think our true potential lies.
This is a critical breakthrough, which is when you stop caring what people think and you start caring what you want, that's when change really happens. For me, it happened with age and it
Mhm.
happened with getting to a point where I kept feeling so held back and my goals and my dreams were getting so big in my head. It was giving me anxiety to
Mhm.
not do something about it. What are some of the lies that people tell themselves that keep them stuck from achieving the things that they truly want in this lifetime?
It's interesting because when I was writing the book, these are some of the same thoughts that I had when I was writing the book are the same thoughts that I see a lot of the people that I work with and know that have this. It's someone else has already said this before. Someone else is better at this. Again, who do I think I am to be doing these things? When we put ourselves out there, that we fear that someone's going to say, well, that's stupid, you don't know this, you don't understand this, you're not smart enough for that. It's those kinds of thoughts that stop us, and we think we need more credibility, we need more education, we need more experience in order to do those things, and forgetting that whenever we try to do something new, of course we're going to stumble because we're beginners. And so the people who I work with are usually the people who are trying to strive to some next level. And what they don't take into account is that when you're trying to get to a next level that you've never been at before, you're going to be a beginner. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall on your face. You should expect that so that you can learn from it. It's when we don't expect it and then it happens, it's like, oh, well, then I wasn't meant to do this. When that is the exact opposite of what we need to do.
The someone else already did this hits hard for me. We read books, we listen to podcasts. In my case, I get to interview amazing people like you, and I learn so much. And the reality is I repeat a lot of the things I learn because it's so insightful for me and it motivates me and it inspires me. And the reality is that not everyone is reading every book that you've read. Not everyone is listening to every podcast that you listen to. So those insights that you may glean from other people are still valuable, and when they come from you, it's somebody else that can just validate the thoughts that are already common things that maybe people just haven't heard or they haven't heard it the way that you're going to say it. And that would
Right.
resonate with that individual person. So that really hits for me. The other thing is, yeah, I mean, of course, we're all scared to show up for the first time. Like, of course, we're all going to feel like we're not good enough and we're going to be anxious, but like, you just have to do it. And the more you do it, the more reps, the more confidence, the better it gets.
Yeah. When I first started doing work at Harvard Business School, I was obviously awestruck. Like, here I am, I'm at Harvard Business School. And then the next immediate thought was, what am I doing here? Like there's these incredibly smart people all around me, and the more I got involved in it, the more I realized they're just everyday people like everyone else. The most famous, the most rich, the most successful people in the world are still people who still struggle with the exact same things that everyone else does. And remembering that is hard in the moment, and sometimes it's a reflection that you have afterwards. And when someone tells you that and then you're amidst of it, you're like, yeah, but, and then there's this, and I'm not that. And we continue to convince ourselves that we don't belong in a space that we've never been in before. Says who?
So this is good because it's true. Sometimes you walk into a room and you feel like, oh my gosh, do I belong here? How do limiting beliefs disguise themselves as logic?
Our beliefs are something that have developed over a lifetime, right? So you didn't just wake up one day and start suddenly believing something. It is a series of thoughts and experiences that have told you that this is reality. And so then that's just logical. Okay. So you know what? I grew up with a single mom. I had a double wide trailer in the woods. I was on, state assistance to be able to raise my kids. Logic would say that that's pretty much going to be it for me. That this is the majority of people, they don't necessarily rise out of that. I've had experiences in my life where I should have been a statistic and not where I am now. And I think that the logic we think is we look around us and think, well, everyone else is pretty much at the same place I am. Everyone else is doing these particular things. And so, of course, this would be normal that I'm in this exact same place. And we convince ourselves of that because of the thought that repeats in our head over and over and over again. I think there's a study that said that we get anywhere from like 45,000 to 60,000 negative thoughts every single day. And the challenge is of how do we you don't necessarily stop those things, but being able to recognize them for what they are and then start to replace them with something else. So for example, I'm stretching out my limits right now because I'm always doing that. And so I'm feeling that, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. How am I gonna maybe able to get this off the ground? I see everybody else and what they're doing in this space, and they're so much further ahead of me. Like, who do I think I am to be starting and building an AI coaching platform, right?" And then I look around every once in a while at the home where I live in the woods on a lake, the dream house that I always thought I would have. Coming from a single mom in a double wide trailer, living on state assistance, I sometimes have to remind myself of what I've built, how far I've come, and that I can apply to whatever it is that I'm going to do next. Because I didn't think 20 years ago that I would be here. And yet here I am through every small step that I took, every uncomfortable up and down that I had. And I think we don't do that enough for ourselves as human beings to take stock of how far we really come, how much we've actually learned and what we've accomplished, and allow ourselves to sit in that because it feels indulgent somehow, or it feels like, we're patting ourselves on the back. But the reality is that we need to remind ourselves of those things on a regular basis to encourage us to go after more things. Because if I can do that, I can do this. I remember the first time I had this thought was when I was giving birth to my first son. Now, he was 10 pounds, 2 ounces. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 11 pounds, 2 ounces. He was a big baby, first
Yeah.
one. And I remember, and they almost had to give me an emergency C-section. And I just remember thinking, I don't want a C-section. I can't go through that. This has to happen this way. And I just remember being at the height of pain and thinking to myself, nope, I can't do this. And then my next thought was, well, you don't really have a choice now. It's happening. And I just remember channeling thinking that women for thousands of years have been giving birth and they didn't have hospitals and pain care and nurses and they managed to do it. So if they can do it, then surely I can do it. And I think that that's why it's so important to have people that we look up to that have done things that seem impossible, that if they can do it, I can do it mentality, that there's no difference between them and me. And when we remind ourselves of that, the obstacles don't seem so daunting. They seem more like a puzzle that we need to solve.
Narrative is a big pillar in inspired authority. And when we continue to tell ourselves that we can't do something, we won't do it. And if we
Mhm.
tell ourselves we can do something because we've seen other people do it, because if they can do it, I can do it, that's how you can progress and that's how you get further. I was talking to one of my girlfriends yesterday, and a year ago, she was really having a hard time. And when we were having a conversation, she was sharing all of the new things she's up to. Is she still having a bit of a hard time? Of course,
Mhm.
because her life is growing more than she even knew or expected or has come to realize that she feels uncomfortable. And I had to remind her, like, girl, you feel uncomfortable because you're growing. So, what a beautiful thing. And I
Yeah.
think we just don't take enough time to sit in that and to really reflect and say, wow, 1 year ago, I actually was in a way different place. Look at how far I've come. We
Mhm.
forget to do that. So that is such a good insight, which is like, smell the roses.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because it shows up in our everyday. Like, think about it for a second. Have you ever been in your house and you have to get out the door? You've got a million things that you need to bring with you, and you're running around frantically trying to find all of the stuff, and now you can't find your keys. Your keys are nowhere. Can't tell you how many times this has happened to me with two young kids trying to get out the door and all of those things. And I just remember one day I just stopped. Like, I'm running around and I'm trying to find the keys and I couldn't find that. I'm just so frustrated. And I just stopped and I closed my eyes and just breathed for a moment. And I kid you not, I opened my eyes and my keys were literally right in front of me. I'm like, is this like magic? Like, did someone just play a trick on me? But we get so wrapped up, right, in the pushing forward and needing to get things done and rushing through things because time is so limited that we forget that sometimes the biggest changes, the biggest opportunities happen in stillness. And so that if we can get those moments where we can be still and where we can be quiet with ourselves, which many people are not comfortable with, then we really start to see things a little bit more clearly versus, rushing through and trying to get things done. and missing things that are right in front of us.
Wow. That happens to me all the time.
So when you're frantically trying to find something, the best thing you can do is stop, breathe, calm down, and then just slowly go with it and can tell yourself in your mind, I have plenty of time. There's plenty of time for me to get these things done. The world is not going to end if I'm late or if this particular thing doesn't happen the way I need it to.
That's so good. The other thing that I've done a few times is in moments of like a lot of high stress, I'm moving really fast. I forget to put coffee in the coffee maker and I make the coffee. But what's annoying about that for me is I make my milk first. I like put all the honey and do all the things. And then I put it in the coffee maker. So then I end up with water milk. So anyway, it's a really good piece of feedback to sometimes just slow down and
Hmm.
pay attention to what you're doing when you're doing it. Because for me, coffee is low risk, but who knows what I could mess up when I'm moving really fast. And actually, it could have been so much better if I just slowed down.
And the irony is that when you slow down, you actually go faster. This applies to sales conversation. This applies to finding your keys. This applies to exercise. I don't know. I've been doing a lot of strength training lately. And so, I'm always thinking, oh, I'm going to lift all of these heavy weights and do it rather quickly. But it's actually the slower you do something, the harder it is in strength training. And I didn't realize that. And so just this concept of, especially in the age today, we have AI, everything is moving more than lightning fast. This is the one thing that we can do as humans is to be able to slow down to see clearly.
I love that. And I love that you're strength training me too. And the looking in the mirror and seeing the difference has given me so much joy. So for anyone who isn't working out, who isn't moving their body, like please do it. It
Mhm.
feels so good and it sucks in the moment because I actually always hated working out. I still hate working out. You can ask my trainer, I complain every time. But at the end of it, and when I look at my body, I'm so full of joy for putting in that hard work and for doing the uncomfortable thing.
Yeah. For me, it's feeling strong and being able to walk and lift things and yes, okay, yes, look better, but it's how I feel and the strength that I feel that, when I'm moving or walking, things aren't jiggling everywhere. But that feeling of strength and it's funny too, like even my husband's like, "Are you sure you can lift that?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure I can lift that."
I love that. Incredible. Okay, so I want to talk about because we talked a lot about limiting beliefs,
Mhm.
but we haven't talked enough about fear. So I
Mhm.
want to know from your perspective, how much of our day to day and our human behavior is actually being driven by fear?
I would say probably the majority of it. I mean, there's the statistic of how many thoughts run through our head that are negative, and the reason is because as human beings we were always looking for what's the thing that's going to be endangering to us, what is the thing that's going to harm us in some way, and fear, which it then activates our amygdala in our brains, which is that fight or flight type of a response. That's one of the largest drivers of action and behavior for human beings. It's sometimes also the thing that freezes us. It's the thing that causes us to not want to do anything because of the fear of change, because of where the uncertainty that's going to happen. The reality is there's nothing that's promised us. We're surrounded by uncertainty on any given basis. The only thing that we can control is what happens between our ears.
Do you have any advice for those moments where we do start to feel that fight or flight? And I think a lot of us don't label it, but like
Mhm.
certainly there's those situations that are actually like again low risk,
Yep.
but you start to feel that fight or flight and your body, your nervous system, I guess, takes over. I'm not an expert in nervous system, but what would you give for advice when we're starting to feel that fight or flight mode?
I think the first thing is to name it. To name that I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling concerned, I'm feeling this particular thing. And it is almost as if we're examining ourselves and our own thinking of something. And so for me, when I'm feeling that particular fear of something, which happens on a regular basis, is one to recognize what it is, call it out to yourself or to someone else. And sometimes it's even, talking to someone about this helps you to start to process it. And then the next question is to start to question, where is this coming from for me? what is causing this? Where does this fear come from in my past that maybe this has happened before and I'm afraid that it's going to happen again? And and then my favorite question to ask myself is, all right, on a scale of 0 to death, how really bad is this? Like, is this something that's going to kill me, that something's going to harm me, or is just going to be an inconvenience? And then the next series of thoughts that I have, I'm like, okay, so worst case scenario, this does happen. Then what? What are the options that we have as a result of that? And it's really being able to examine our own thinking around it and our own feelings around it that allow us to then start to put it in its proper place. I'm not going to say that we should never fear anything because it's a part of our human DNA. But when it starts to take over and gives you that moment where you just freeze and you can't do anything, that's when it's helpful to have either the questions in your mind to ask, or I've also developed like physical things that you can do. So when you're afraid of something and maybe you're talking to yourself in your mind about something, or you're having a really tough conversation and you're already thinking in your head of what it is that you need to say next because your fear feel you mean you need to defend your stance, is to take that moment and to pause and take a breath. There's this method called box breathing where you breathe in and you hold it for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, you repeat that 4 times. Navy SEALs do it before they go into combat missions. And what it does is it lowers your regulation in your nervous system. It slows down your heart rate, your breath rate. And what that does is it allows you to then start to think a little bit clearer. So there's that. I've even had, like in moments, I've had an elastic on my wrist and I would snap that elastic to bring me back to the present moment. Because it's being in the present moment that sometimes makes us feel that fear of something. And so we want to think forward of something or think backwards of something rather than be in the moment and sit in whatever uncomfortable thing we're in. And so being able to be in the present moment and process that. And then the other part of it is to realize that nothing stays the same forever. So when things are really great, I want to make sure that I enjoy that in that moment. And when things are really bad, to remember that this too will pass. Things are going to change because they always do. It never stays in this state forever, especially when you're taking action towards it. And, it doesn't always work every single time, but having those personal strategies for yourself, whether it's snapping an elastic or pressing your thumbs together or going outside for a walk or 5 or 10 minutes and having no electronics and just breathing in fresh air, hanging out with your dog, like all of these are small little things that you can start to use to break those patterns that bring you back into a present moment so that you can start to examine, all right, what's really going on here in my mind? Why am I feeling this way? Why is this person annoying me so very much right now? And when we can start to examine and think about our own thinking, that's where true behavioral change and transformation happens.
All of that is so good for strategies. Thank you for sharing that. You brought something to light for me that I want to share, which is you mentioned naming the
Mm,
feeling, naming the behavior, and then referencing the past. We talked about fight or flight in like that moment, right? In that moment, I'm feeling
mhm,
overwhelmed. In that moment, I'm feeling annoyed. But actually, I think some of us feel or have these behaviors, those limiting beliefs, let's call one example,
right.
that has been happening for so long, but actually we are not aware or noticing it. What I will say is, Lauren Bailey, shout out to you. I adore you. She was the one who, and I don't think she even knows this or realizes this, but she brought to life that I needed to work on my confidence. She's I don't know what she said to me, but something along the lines of like that I'm still playing small and that I'm
Mhm,
capable of more and that I need to work on my confidence and I'm having limiting beliefs. She didn't say those words, but I understood what she was telling me in a way that led me to reflecting. And then the reference point I started to realize was when I was a little girl, I was told that somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I was older, and I said
mhm,
a singer, and they said, "Well, that's not realistic." And wow, I so Lauren Bailey like gave me the realization of, hold on, I'm playing so small. But then I went back and referenced, well, that's because when I was a little girl, I was told that my dreams weren't realistic, and I've
mhm,
held on to that until I was a grown woman.
mhm.
And now I need to actually figure out how I go forward with that.
Yep.
So a big question I have for you is, are there other examples or other reasons why people stay in situations that they've outgrown or, continue to play small in life? Like, do
Mhm.
you have any other examples of that and ways that people can overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, and like this happens every day, right? We have, relationships with friends that we've had since high school that we've outgrown, but we still hold on to them either out of a sense of loyalty or a fear of change and uncertainty, or, like I don't want to be the person that just says, well, you're not good enough for me anymore. Like we somehow think that in our minds, or we stay in a situation that's not good. My first husband was not a great person, but I stayed in that situation because I didn't believe that I could do any better. I believed that if I left that I would have a negative impact on my kids. I believed that the things that he told me that I'd never be able to make it without him. And we believe those things and thinking because it feels safe at that time, right? And because of the way that I grew up, the way that he was normal to me. This is how I thought people behaved with each other. And it took an outside person to come to me and say, "No, this isn't how it normally is. This is not how I know you to be." And so sometimes we also have to have that circle of people. Lauren is also one of those people for me who calls us out on those things. Lori Richardson, she's another human being who I adore because she'll call me out on things when I say things or when I think things. And so we need to have that circle of people who we can be ourselves with, good, bad, ugly, and otherwise, and kind of entrust them with the calling you out on that when that happens. And that's, one of the reasons why I adore my husband so much, because every so often he'll hear the doubts that I have in these things and he's like, "Yeah, you flourish under pressure, babe." Like, I don't know what you're worried about, and, this is just, that other side of you that you're listening to. And so, having that circle of people that will call you out on it, and doing that work to recognize, where does this come from for me? Very similar situation when I was in choirs, I was a singer, and whenever I would try out for solos, I would freeze up because I didn't think I was a soloist, and it came from a music teacher years ago telling me that I had a very nice voice, but I didn't have a lead voice. And that stuck with me. I just put myself in that box and I stayed there. And, it was something that I had to eventually overcome, but it was also something that I had to be willing to listen to other people around me who told me, "No, this is who you are. This is who I know you to be." Sometimes we need that reminder because the thoughts in our heads beat us down.
We do, and if we're shouting people out, Jill Miller helped me because she called me out too, Again, girls club is the best. I love
Yeah.
all the women in girls club. I was struggling and the words I was using, she said, "You better stop using those words, girl." And
Mhm.
so thank you, Jill. We love you and appreciate you.
Yeah. Sometimes we just need people to remind us of who we are. I had my a
Amen.
friend of mine, Katie McDonald, and was struggling with some things in the business, and she's like, "You're Carole effing Mahoney." I'm like, "You're right, I am. Thank you for the reminder."
I love that. Oh, so good. So what do you personally do when fear shows up? How do you overcome those feelings?
I have a series of strategies that I use. So one of them is I have routines that I go through, and that routines ground me, right? Not that I try to get stuck in them, but they actually ground me in a way that I can then rise to certain situations. So I wake up each morning and I live on a beautiful lake. My dog comes and wakes me up, and I have my routine is we have our tea and our coffee. I go downstairs, we have our breakfast, I go for a walk, I do my yoga, I do some journaling, I plan out my day. And when I'm doing the journaling, that's when I start writing down, like, what are the things that I'm curious of or afraid of? How do I want to show up today? What are the things that I need to tackle and go through? That daily routine for me helps me to identify those fears and then kind of work through them. And who are the people that I can lean on for this? And I would say that the other thing is having that circle of people. I have multiple circles of people. So there's girls club. I'm with Lauren in a group called Legacy right now that we're in, which is so amazing. And so really forcing myself to get out when I'm feeling those fears to really confront them by being around more people. And then when it's really overwhelming for me, my go-to strategies are like when I'm stressed and things are overwhelming and things are just not going well and it's one no or rejection after another, I go outside. And even if it's 0 degrees outside, somehow being in nature, fresh air just gives me a perspective. And actual movement, whether it's walking or bicycle riding, or even sometimes I'm just driving in a car or in a train, some type of motion that I can move my body and changes the way that my brain starts to operate. It's when you're sitting there and you're stewing in it and you're frozen, or you're trying to distract yourself with TV or reading too much news or going on social media. When I start seeing those things happen in my behaviors, that's when I'm like, okay, that's when I know I need to start changing some things and limiting or eliminating social media or scrolling through the news or, watching TV shows that just further traumatize me in some way. Because, I mean, come on, it's either violence or war or alien takeover. It's like there's nothing there that's going to make you feel a whole lot better. When I see myself doing those things, or if, someone calls me out on it, that's when I realize I need to go back to my routines. And I need to go back to how am I going to deal with this in a healthy way versus I'm just trying to distract myself because I don't want to feel it. And so when you don't want to feel it, that's usually the clue where you need to sit in it. And that is the most uncomfortable piece of it is when you don't feel good, you're all of the emotions are running, is to allow yourself to sit in that for a little while and truly feel it so that you can move past it. It's when we try to distract ourselves that we end up wallowing in it even more. And then we try to go to sleep at night and all day long when we've been trying to distract it, suddenly it comes rushing in again at the moments when we need to sleep.
Yeah, that's so good. We need to normalize spending time with ourselves and removing the distractions. And I said this on the last episode, and I'm going to say it again. We hear ourselves loudest when it's quiet.
Yeah.
I personally gave up social media for 40 days. It
Mhm.
was life changing and it changed my relationship with social media. And I now use it as a growth engine versus a distraction because the scrolling is not good. And I agree. When I am having a hard time or anxious or uncomfortable, I do find myself scrolling.
Yep.
So it's important to realize why that's happening and then remove it and start to think about, okay, how do I overcome what I'm actually dealing with versus just
Right.
distracting it?
Yeah.
So, Carol, a big part of inspired authority is also presence, right? So we
Mhm.
did a lot of talk about the internal and the identity and the narratives. All of that is a part of inspired authority. But then how do we actually show up in life? And how do we continue to drive that confidence? How do we continue to drive the impact that we also so much want to have in this world? A big question for you is what does authority mean to you? How do you see people building it? And how do people unintentionally give away their authority?
I see authority as I see it as the ability to have control over yourself. That when you can truly not that you're just like so rigid and controlled in something, but when you can recognize your behaviors and your actions and your thoughts for what they are, and to be able to then monitor and to control that, that is where I feel real authority comes. When you can master yourself, then you can master anything outside of you. And so for me, authority is that ability to be in tune with who we are, in tune with what we're thinking and how we're moving through the world. And that then shows up as confidence. That then shows up as natural authority when you walk into a room. And you can feel it when someone walks into a room and they just exude that kind of authority. It's because they're completely comfortable and confident in who they are. And it's not that they're the best at something or that they're the smartest person in the room, but they're just comfortable in their own skin. And that takes, yes, I mean I'm going to be 52 this year, so I can fully admit that I didn't really start getting there until I was into my 40s. I wish it was something I knew in my 20s and my 30s. I probably would have had much less gray hair right now. But it's that type of authority over ourselves that then kind of goes into the room before we even do. That we're not looking for like, who can I side up with because I'm uncomfortable with everything. It shows up in our posture about how we walk into a room, how we speak to other people. That's where I think true authority comes from because that is the only thing we have control over.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's another pillar that we haven't talked about, which is like that stewardship and
Mm,
that owning of yourself and how you show up in this world based on what you work on every single day for yourself. And then when you're so confident in who you are and what you do and how you do it, that does present externally.
yeah. And it's
Now,
and not blaming outside circumstances or outside people for where you are today. Well, my mom was this and my dad was this and someone kept telling me this and so that's why I am the way that I am. You are the way that you are because you made the choice to be. And you continue to
ooh,
make the choice to be. And so when we blame our circumstances on everything else around us, we have no control anymore. It's all about what happens to us instead of what we make happen.
I love that. Now I wanna make the buyer first connection
Mm,
because I am a sales leader, and so all of but sales in life, like using sales skills in life is actually critical. So,
yeah. Sales skills are life skills in my mind.
amen. So, one of your core ideas is buyer first.
Mhm.
What if we applied that philosophy to our life? Like, how do we actually use that in our personal lives outside of
Yeah.
sales?
Well, and this has been a kind of an ironic or funny byproduct of the work that I've done. So I've also been working in sales or go-to market and marketing for over 20 years now. And as I started doing this work with coaching clients and managers and with leaders, one of the things that I never expected to happen is that they would come to me months and years later and say, you know what? I got the promotion. I got, 2 to 300% over my quota. I've been in President's Club every year. I'm like the number one salesperson year after year. And I just got engaged. I'm a better husband. I'm a better parent. I'm a better wife. I'm a better employee. I'm a better neighbor. I'm a happier person as a result of all of this. I never really expected that. And so I knew it happened for me, but I didn't know that it would happen for other people. I remember when I first started going through my own sales coaching and changing my beliefs and what I thought of myself. And my kids were young and they came in one day and I was making dinner and they said, you know what, mom, you yell a lot less than you used to. And it was a bit of a gut punch, but then it was also a bit of a realization that I didn't just change my sales tactics and didn't gain more skills. I actually changed who I am. I became a better person as a result of this because the whole concept behind buyer first is to put other person's needs before your own. Now, this isn't to say you're going to be a doormat, you're going to let people walk all over you and you don't have any boundaries and you don't, take care of yourself. But it is a truth and it is scientifically proven now that true joy and true happiness doesn't come from being focused on ourselves and, this whole era of, it's got to be about me first and I need to do what I need to do first and I need to have this work-life balance. That is not where joy and happiness come from. It actually comes from helping other people in service of other people. And of course there's a balance there, but that is what I'm starting to realize is that as we start to do the behavioral changes that we need to do in order to put other people first, it changes who we are as people. It changes our relationships with other people. And I look at it as if we were to apply the concepts of buyer first to our country, to our international relations, to how we work in business in general, that we would have a much different culture and society today than we do now. That we would, I live in the country. And so I don't know about where you live, but where I live, you need to know who your neighbors are because we don't have fire police. We don't have paved roads. We don't have trash service. Like if we have an emergency, it's going to take 20 minutes for someone to get here. We are in the middle of nowhere. And so you have to know and rely on your neighbors, despite what your political stances might be or your religious stances might be. We're here for each other. And I think that is the buyer first concept at work, that I see my neighbor who is struggling with a flat tire or he's stuck in his driveway because they can't get out. I'm not going to ignore that. I'm going to go over and help them. And I'm going to feel better about that. We had talked a few minutes ago about what are some of the things that I do when I'm in that moment of fear and scarcity is that I go out and do something for someone else because it lifts me out of the funk that I'm in and all of the things that seem to be swirling around me that are bringing and dragging me down. that if I can go and help someone with something simple or have a conversation and mentor someone, suddenly my whole day is better. And so I think this is the concept of buyer first, is that we're not so much worried about what we're getting out of a situation, but are we able to help someone else get what they need in that particular moment? And it might not always be what they want, but it might be what they need.
That is incredible because I talk a lot about filling your cup first, and that is important. But
Yeah.
have we gone too far on putting ourselves first? Because the reality is that community is very important in our lives, and serving is also critical to self fulfillment. So, what you're saying not only is resonating, but it's helping me to evolve what I think is really important in this lifetime, which is, yes, of course, you have to fill your cup first, but don't forget to fill other people's as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the whole saying is that if you're not whole, then you can't help someone else. And so that's where the responsibility to take care of yourself comes from. Not because taking care of yourself first and foremost is the thing that's going to make you happy, but it's the thing that's going to enable you to be there for someone else. And that it's that dynamic that we need to start flipping, I believe, on our head, because I do think that we've gone a little bit too far in the you first and then everyone else. Because now look at where that's cutting us.
Wow. That is insightful. And I have not, no one's talking about this. No one's talking about this. That is
Yeah.
so good. Okay. So if someone is feeling stuck right now, they're like, okay, this has been a really great conversation, but where do I start? What's the first question you would recommend they ask themselves?
This was something that I had to learn a little bit the hard way, because I guess that's just how most of us learn, is I had these goals and I thought that these goals meant something to me. But what it really was is that by reaching these particular goals, whether it was a revenue number or a thing that I accomplished, it was not the thing that really drove me. It was the values that I had that were represented by my goals. So for me, some of my I actually have a hard time setting goals for myself, believe it or not, because I don't I don't need things. Like I don't need a fancy car, I don't need a fancy house, I don't need a lot of fancy vacations, but I have a family who I want to be able to give those things to. So when I first set out to set goals, I set goals for things that they wanted because that brought me joy. And it was through that process that I started to recognize and understand what my values were and then how that tied to my personal goals. So, I one of my goals is that I want to be completely off the grid. I was raised in a family that we lived in the woods, we went hunting in the woods, we went camping in the woods. Like I didn't know what a hotel was until I was in my 20s because we always camped for our vacations. And what I was taught was that you never leave a place with a mark behind. You leave it in a better place that you found it. And that's something that is a core value for me, to leave things in a better place than I found them. And that carries through to the work that I do, but it also carries through into how I live. I want to be off grid because I don't want to be something that's going to cause the next generation to not have fresh water or fresh air. And being off the grid also was that I could then survive whatever comes next. I can take care of my family. It ties back to the values that I have. So if you find yourself struggling, if you find yourself stuck and you don't know what direction to go in, think about what really matters to you. Not a dollar amount, not a status sort of a place, but at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed and you're looking at your family, what is the thing that you're going to be most proud of? Not the thing that you did or the thing that you accomplished, but it's likely the relationships that you've had or what kind of a legacy that you've left behind for the others that follow you and how you're going to be remembered. Start there. Start with what are the things that really matter to me that I will fight for, that I will do whatever I have to do to get there. And why is that something that's so important to me? And where does that come from? When you dig into that, then everything else starts to become more clear. And whatever struggle it is that you're dealing with right now doesn't seem so big anymore. Because in the light of how I want to leave this life and what I want to leave behind for my kids is much bigger than any doubt that I might have today or any bad review that I might get or any deal that I might not have won. I'm not going to remember any of that at the end. So start there and continually revisit that. When I do my journaling every morning and I look at the things that I want to do, I go outside in nature. I I'm in my garden because these are the things that tie back to my values.
Values, writing them down, having them, knowing them, actually, in my opinion, are very tied to understanding what does success equal for you.
Mhm,
Once you figure out what you value, you can start to define what success looks like because most people think success is having a nice house, having a nice car, having a nice bag. But the reality is you might not that might not be success for you. You got to
mhm.
figure out what your values are first before you can truly define success.
And I will also say this, because I have had some clients that I've worked with that, their value was that they like to have nice name brand things. But when you start digging in underneath that, it's maybe not quite as superficial as you might think it is. I remember one workshop that I did years ago where we went through this goal setting exercise and I had people share what their goals were. And one gentleman at the back of the room stood up and said, I want to have a private plane. And I could hear some of the eye rolls in the room, like, oh God, here we go again. This, dude who wants a plane, big surprise. So, but I started to ask him some questions about it to be curious. Before you start judging other people, start with curiosity. And I asked him, I'm like, well, so why is that something that's so important to you right now? He said, well, it's important to me right now because my wife and I are about to retire. She is deathly afraid of flying unless I'm the pilot. And so I've been renting a plane for us to travel because it's the only way that she will travel. And I'm realizing that it's costing me a lot more money to rent and lease a plane than it would for me to buy a plane so that my wife and I can travel and we can visit our grandkids and our kids. And she doesn't have to worry about flying commercial because she's so afraid of it. So for him, it was getting a plane allows him to spend more time with his wife and his family. It wasn't a status symbol, it was what it enabled him to do. And like another client of mine, she's like, I want to be able to afford, I don't know, whatever fancy bag it was, because that tells me that I can do whatever it is that I set out to do. It was a symbol of something that reflected her value, not that I feel like my values are in brand names. They're in what it symbolizes for me. So before you judge somebody else, think about what might be going on underneath that. Be curious and ask, and you'll find that most people who seem superficial, it's actually there's something very personal and value driven underneath that most of the time.
Incredible. Well, those are great sales skills, asking the questions, right?
Right.
Seek to understand before you judge. Because I
Mhm.
think at the surface, and especially a lot of salespeople, they take what the person says and they're like, okay, but they're not understanding the why. That's so
Yeah.
good. Sales 101.
Sales
Wh-
101 and human relationships 101. Human relationships and sales go hand in hand because
I love that.
when I say sales skills or life skills, when you learn how to have those sales skills, they apply to every other aspect of your life, whether you're a leader or a manager or a parent. We're all salespeople. We're all selling something. We've been doing it our whole lives. Just we don't necessarily like being called a salesperson because of the connotation
Yeah.
to it. Yeah.
I like to be called a salesperson, but not everyone does.
And most people say, well, you're a good salesperson. They don't always mean it in a nice way.
Yeah.
Or
Good
anyone who's
point.
ever said, okay, I'm sold, have never said it with a sense of joy. It's just like, okay, I give up. I'm sold.
So good. Okay. So if someone feels called to do more, but they are afraid to move, what do they need to hear?
If they're called to do more and they're afraid to move, I think this is what I would say to those people because they're afraid to move because they're worried about what other people might think is it's really none of your business what anyone else thinks. And for the most part, people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think that they are. Like, think about it for a second. I had a salesperson who was like, well, if I call them 7 times, aren't they going to think that I'm annoying? I'm like, they're not even going to remember at all that you've called them 7 times. And can you think of or remember a time when someone emailed you or called you 7 times? You even remember any of their names? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, so then what makes you think that you're going to be the one that stands out that they're going to find you in a room 10 years later and be, oh my God, you called me 7 times. It's not going to happen.
That's so good. Carol, thank you for joining me today. Are there any other lasting pieces of advice or affirmations or any other thoughts that you'd like to leave with the audience today?
I have one thing, and I'm going to share it with you because I designed these t-shirts for clients when I was coaching them. And it's a reminder that it's not about you. And the words are upside down on the t-shirt for the person who's wearing the t-shirt to remember that it's not about me, because we need that constant reminder, because we're always so worried about what's in it for me, like the old radio station. And so when we have that reminder to make it about other people, things get a lot simpler rather quickly.
Wow. Well, thank you for leaving that. And I totally agree. If we were only here on this planet for us, we're not. We're not
Yeah.
only here on this planet for us. We are here to leave a legacy. We are here to make an impact. We do have a purpose in this world. So don't go so far into the I need to worry about me. Don't forget that you are here to make an impact and to do something in this world that does leave more for other people to get from what you've learned here on this planet. So, yeah, growth isn't usually about learning something new, it's about unlearning something old. We talked a lot about that today. An old belief, an old fear, or an old story about who you are and what you're capable of. And maybe the next chapter of your life doesn't just need more confidence. Maybe it just requires trust in yourself. If this conversation resonated with you, send it to someone, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Carole has been an incredible guest, and I have incredible guests every single week. We talk about the things that you need to hear to continue to grow and to continue to have the best life that you could possibly have here on this earth. So, thank you again for being here, and I can't wait to see you all in the next episode. Thank you, Carole, for sharing all your insights today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Laura. I really enjoyed it.